Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Incomplete Skeptic Sober Wise Guy series. Here we explore marginalized ideas and the people behind them. Since we might discuss prisons, corrections, maybe even recovery or drinking or not drinking, I am going to admit up front that both my guest and I are ex-convicts. But we are more than our mugshots. So there, world. We will be discussing challenging, probably sensitive topics that might trigger some people. So that being said, I'm going to make a YouTube video for 18 years old and over. I don't want anyone going crazy in pain and not knowing how to deal with it. So parents, if you show this to your kids, you know what to expect. So Socrates tendered the idea that the unexamined life is not worth living. It's a famous maxim that he spoke at his trial for impiety and debasing youth, for which he was subsequently sentenced to death. Well, the incomplete skeptic, sober wise guy, does not censor voices. No one has to die for their opinion here. No censoring allowed. Today's guest on the Incomplete Skeptic is Sondra deWerd. I saw her interviewed by a Minneapolis police officer years ago, and I watched it again recently. Sondra and I have made a couple of bad decisions in our lives. We have some things in common, but we work now to help others not make the mistake that we made, that of killing someone while driving impaired. There's your trigger warning. I contacted Sondra to be a guest, and she said yes. And I am so glad she did. Sondra, welcome to the Incomplete Skeptic, Sober Wise Guy. Thank you so much for saying yes.
Yes, thank you for having me.
My privilege, totally. We had a little discussion, ladies and gentlemen, before we started the show. So we got our some of our ducks in a row and got a good feel for our respective backgrounds. And I have rarely met someone who has turned their lives around in the way that Sondra has. And the Minneapolis cop that interviewed her, oh, it was just an amazing story. And I'm wondering if Sondra, you can give a little bit of a background on that interview, why you did it. It was on YouTube, by the way, and I'll put it in the link as well when I post mine. Why did you speak to this sergeant, and where did that whole story emanate from? And of course, that means you'd have to go back into what led you there, what you were like a little bit, and then what happened. And of course, at some point, we'll definitely talk about what you're like now.
Yeah. So when I was in prison, I kind of made a bucket list for myself of things that I wanted to do once I got out. It's always been a goal of mine to help since I just felt like God kept me alive for a reason. I don't know what that reason is. Besides, I'm here and I should do good. And I spoke at Rosemount High School. My cousins attended that high school, so that's kind of how I got my foot in the door. And I spoke, it went well. I went back home and I got a call from Sergeant Michael. And I didn't meet her at the high school at all. She had just been there and heard me speak. So she called asking if I would like to bring awareness on the dangers of drunk driving for the 4th of July. And I said, yeah, that's cool. So she drove to my house from Minneapolis and brought, I believe it was a woman from Care 11 News. I don't know. I was assuming there was going to be a cell phone in my face with the video on, I mean, I'm so bad at technology. And nope, they had the little floppy things and ring lights and everything. They were rearranging my house, making everything look proper. I don't know. And so I'm like, okay, this is the real deal. And she asked me to bring pictures of myself in the past and things that explain how I was in high school, how I was as a young person, a little bit about my family, things like that. So I did as she asked, and she asked questions and we kind of went through everything. And then once the cameras turned off, she started tearing up. And I thought, oh my gosh, what did I do? At that point in my healing journey, I was still very hard on myself. So I was thinking I did something wrong or said something wrong or something. I don't know. I just felt like I did something wrong. And that's when she told me that her daughter was killed by a drunk driver. And she had never seen that person as a human being. She saw them as more of a monster. And don't like quote her words, but paraphrased, and she just looked at me and said, you're just a person. You're just a person that made a mistake. And that was a very cool moment. I'm glad that she did not tell me her background before I was speaking, because I don't know if I would have altered what I said or been a little bit scared, or I just was truly myself. And that was cool for her to get healing. Or I mean, I obviously don't know what she got from that, but it seemed like something good. So
Well, that was for the Minneapolis Police Department, right?
yes.
Yeah, I saw that the video, if anyone wants to look it up on their own, Minneapolis Police Department and Sergeant Michaels, Michels, I believe, if I remember
I
right.
think so.
So it must have really, did you guys hug afterwards or
Hmm.
anything? Or that's awesome. So she found some forgiveness that she wasn't really giving before, and you got to be a part of that. Wow, I'm gonna label that a miracle. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, miracles still happen today.
Hmm.
Um, I think unfortunately a lot of cops, to do their job, it's sometimes they end up dehumanizing people so they don't have to feel like they're um, hurting good people or something, and I think it takes a really strong person to see someone else's humanity. And it's kind of like with suicidal ideations. I don't know if you ever contemplated suicide, but I know I did for 8 years after I
Hmm.
started speaking. And you know, sometimes we can kill somebody with a few words,
Hmm.
and when we're particularly vulnerable and somebody says, well, I think it's not right, you're alive, and that person isn't, and you should be dead. If we're really vulnerable, we might just give up and just say, okay, I guess I'll do that. And, the victim that I had was a 6-month-old child, and there's a time in my life that had the mother said, Timothy, you need to kill yourself, I might have did it. And then what good am I to myself or anybody else? So, but it's, I wanted to give an intro to the idea of suicide because it is such a powerful concept, and it doesn't just plague offenders. Sometimes the victims also contemplate suicide, losing a loved one.
Hmm.
But how did the suicidal ideations pan out in your life, and what'd you do about them?
Oh man, I went through grieving was, I don't even know the word. It changed daily. I felt like um, there were times when I was angry. There were times when I was sad, which would be like the suicidal times, you know. I don't know if that was even pity, feeling sorry for myself during court. Um, but I think my strongest time of wanting to commit suicide was when I was bedridden and I had a lot of time to think, and bedridden because I had a ton of medical injuries myself. So I was very much, when I wasn't hospitalized, I was living in a nursing home. And then once I was out of the nursing home, I was at my mom's house. She kind of like turned her house into a nursing home so I could not be in a nursing home and be in the comfort of my home. Um, but there were times I would take all of my medication in hopes that I would die because I was almost jealous. You know, I was jealous that they had died and they didn't have to feel what I was feeling. And I know people would say, well, I'm sure they would give anything to feel what you're feeling because then that would mean they were alive. You know, I mean, there's just, it's a catch 22. Like
Mhm.
you lose either way in our boats. I mean,
Mhm.
you just do. It's a loss. So you just have
It's
to do it.
it's harder to stay alive than it is to kill
It,
oneself. I mean,
yeah,
people might not realize that, but it takes a lot more courage to stay here.
yeah, a lot. And it's been 12 years and I still have people harassing me, and it has slowed down, but it's constant. And if I would have not gotten the help I needed while in prison, which I am so grateful for, I very much would have killed myself. I don't know how. I don't know when, but I hated myself for so many years. I just didn't know, I didn't know who I was. Couldn't I wasn't raised in a criminal home or anything like that. I just was this like person who's never had a DUI, who never, you know, I'm not saying I was perfect by any means, but I was 23 years old, made a huge mistake, and then you're like, wow, my life is over, you know, and yeah, I'm grateful that I didn't kill myself.
Um,
I
you know,
I it is hard. It is hard every day you have to choose, and even me being a salon owner, I'm in the public eye, really. I mean, I post my before and after photos all the time. If somebody wanted to find me, they could. And they do. But I still put myself out there because, oh, sorry.
you're still there.
Or, okay, good. Of course, I'm on my cell phone, so you know people are beeping in. Um, I I just take the risk because I know I'm worth it, and I know my business is worth it, and I know my life is worth it. But yeah, it wasn't always like that.
Well, if you're dead, you can't help anybody, you
Mhm.
know, and facing it and going through the struggles, it might save someone from doing it too, because most people that drive under the influence, they have no idea, not really in their core, that this could kill somebody. It's like they all believe they're going to be okay. It's like I feel good enough to drive. And I remember when law enforcement took part in a study where they measured the amount of alcohol that they dispensed to everyone in the study. They had judges, they had cops, lawyers, you name it, and stenographers, court reporters, and they give them all the same amount of alcohol, and then a certain amount of time would go by, and they give them a PBT, see what their blood alcohol level was, and then they would administer some more alcohol. Whether you always had the same amount. Some people had beer, some had wine, some people took shots, but then they wouldn't get any more. And they asked questions. And when people were generally at 0.04, they said, "Do you think you could drive and be okay?" And everybody said, "Absolutely not. I've had too much to drink. There's no way in the world right now that I could do that." But when they got up to 0.08, some people were saying they thought they could do it. That's how cunning, baffling, and powerful alcohol is in the frontal lobes of a human being. It's like we would do things when we're under the influence that we'd never do sober. And, you know, you don't have to be an alcoholic. It's not even about that, you know. I mean, you're not an alcoholic, right? You
Right.
just you don't drink is what I understand.
No, I don't drink. It was kind of weird because I wasn't sure if I'd drink again. You know, I didn't feel like banned from drinking or anything, but I don't know if God took that away from me or what, but I've tried sips here and there and I'm like, you know what? I just don't this is not it for me. This whole experience scared the living poo out of me. So I'm just
Mm-hmm.
not it's not worth it. And it truly doesn't do anything good for anybody. And I don't know if I feel so at ease maybe now that it's been so many years and I have gone to counseling for so long, and I'm not saying I'm totally over it, but I don't need to mask anything. I don't need to hide from anything. I just feel like I'm okay with myself. So I don't feel the need to have any substance in my body.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same opinion. I do it for a different reason. I'm in recovery, you know, and
Mhm.
um, I realized that I was powerless over alcohol, and I quit drinking August 19th of 90, and I still don't drink, and I
Good
still
for you.
attend meetings occasionally, you know, a couple of meetings a week generally.
Mhm.
Um, and I have a lot of friends in recovery. So I eat, breathe, and think recovery. But to me, recovery looks like um, good good friends, you know, a relationship with God as I understand God, and trying to be of service to my fellow human beings, whether it's just opening a door or you know petting somebody's cat or scratching the dog's ears and you know for them and hugging a tree. I don't care what it is, you know, going hiking. All that is part of the deal. So, but if I was drinking again, I think I would literally be willing to get behind the wheel of a car. I believe that's possible. Maybe it wouldn't happen. I have no idea, and I don't want to find out, you
Oh,
know.
me either.
But I think the obsession with alcohol and my fantasy about it being such a wonderful thing, you know, disappeared when I realized that I was powerless over alcohol. I
Mhm.
didn't mind an unmanageable life. I just thought that was exciting, you know. As boring people are afraid of that, you know. But
Mhm.
when I couldn't stop, you know, throwing up the last time I drank, and I could have went back to prison because I just got out. I got out of prison on the 17th. I drank on the 18th of August of 90 and just violated my supervised release about 30 times, you know. And I was trying to start fights and arguments and hitting on, you know, men's wives and girlfriends in bars, you know, and that usually has a dire, you know, forecast.
Yeah.
And you know, and you know, so um, and people would just shake their head and walk away. It's like, you know, it's like God was saving me from myself, and I didn't have any police, no bouncers threw me out, no one beat up the a drunk guy's easy to beat up. You punk slap me and I'd fell right over. I mean, I'm drunk, you know,
Mhm.
and and I was letting my mouth overload my butt, which is one of the things I do. But anyway, end of the story is that I saw that I had walked through like a miracle of not getting arrested. I always got arrested for behaving like an idiot, you know, and my behaving like an idiot, the outside changed, but the inside was always the same. Alcohol is there, and it's not illegal to be crazy. It's only illegal to act crazy. And when I drink, I act on the things that are, you know, been installed. And then in sobriety got to uninstall some of those things. So what have you uninstalled in your consciousness? How the heck is it that you can get to a point in your life where you say, you know, you can look in the mirror and say, Sondra, you're a good human being. I love you. I'm so grateful for the things I have in my life.
I don't think that happened till last year. And I can't tell you why or what, or because people tell me all the time. I have a great support system, and my family has been there from the get-go, and I'm so grateful for them. And I don't know. I guess having my kids and raising them, and they're good little human beings, and my business is succeeding, and I'm not a screw up. And I guess I was just able to finally be like, you know what? It was one incident, a terrible incident, but you haven't looked back. I mean, I refuse to look back. And obviously I look back as in to educate people on it, but I don't look back or think, yeah, let's get crazy again. Or I don't know. I also think, well, I know that one of my victims' families came forward shortly after I had gotten out, probably a year after I got out. And we have been, I'd say, I would consider us pretty close ever since I cut their hair. I mean, one year they came to Christmas. The mom
Wow.
said loves me. We talk about literally everything, whether it's her child that's no longer, or her child that's living, or her husband, or issues, or I mean, we're just, I would say, friends. And I think that was a really big piece of my liking myself, because if she can like me, or if their family can like me, then wow, I should probably like myself too, because that I don't I don't fault the families that do not like me still, because I know that's hard. I know that would be very hard to forgive somebody that was involved in your child's death. I know that that would be terribly hard. I can't even fathom it. I just hope that I would be like Julie and their family, because wow, they're good to me.
So when they, at the time of sentencing, when they did victim impact statements, and they showed a photograph I saw of the one of the mothers who, Tracy,
Mhm.
and um, she was in tears and the like, and how it impacted her. But I noticed they didn't show the photograph of you and crying, you know. And I saw some of the data and some of the articles was not representative of all the facts. And that
Mhm.
was obvious from an independent, you know, um, point of view. And, they leave out things that really need to be known. And at the time of sentencing and at the time of hearing the victim impact statements, I mean, what did that do to you? And what did they leave out, if you're willing to talk about that a little?
Yeah, I mean, it's public knowledge, really, if
Mhm.
people really wanted to dig. So I'm open. At the time of sentencing, I had a traumatic brain injury because of this incident, and so they liked to play off of that my emotions were not proper. I don't know. And my medical history, I'm writing a book, and I'm putting my medical history. I'm just putting all of that in there, because no, my emotions were not proper. Half my head was shaved from I don't know what you call it. I'm not medical, but that thing that's
Mhm.
drilled into your skull
Yeah.
to relieve pressure from your brain, from the bleeding in your brain. Um, I had my hair was probably this short, but I had like almost a comb over to hide the bald area.
Mhm. Mhm.
And my feet were dang near gone in the accident. My pelvis was broken, my lungs were collapsed. I mean, I had a lot to heal from. And yes, I know that's not dead, so that's great. But no, my emotions were not probably how
Mm-hmm.
somebody maybe would have reacted if they did not have a brain injury, I guess, and um so that was frustrating to read, that I like had no remorse. And I've heard that so many times, that I've had no remorse. And I'm like, you would have to be the devil to not have remorse about an accident like this.
Or have serious trauma to the brain. And
Yes.
a person, some people heal and they come back later and then they experience it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what happened to me. And I was grateful that I was in prison to deal with it. I know that sounds weird, but I was able to deal with it in private. And um, that was challenging because prison did not offer me a ton of resources, I guess, to deal with brain stuff. But like before I went in, I was very much part of the Traumatic Brain Association, and I was having to have not physical therapy, occupational therapy weekly or sometimes twice a week. I mean, the first time I went to that, my parents are on both sides. I'm in a wheelchair. My feet are, they have to be erect because the bleeding and stuff. And the doctor or whoever was asking me who the president of the United States was. And I said, Johnny Appleseed. Now, that is hilarious today, but that's where my brain was at. And so to put somebody through, or to ask questions or something in a courtroom, who thinks Johnny Appleseed is the president of the United States, and then to talk smack in the newspaper about that, it just, my family and everybody was just like, gosh, if you really knew where she was at right now. But it doesn't matter, because only the victims matter.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how the sees it. Only the victims matter.
When I first joined MAD, they had victim impact panels. But then at some point, MAD National decided that if we have an offender speaking on a panel, it's no longer a victim impact panel. So we're going to just call it an impact panel. And I thought, well, that's kind of like marginalizing me, what I'm not an equal partner in the team now,
Right.
sort of a thing. And I'm working as hard as anyone else to stop drunk driving and putting the victims first, or future potential victims, this whole thing. So I think when people are in pain, they can easily justify marginalizing other people. And being able to step outside of your pain and not let your pain body speak to situations to which it doesn't really determine your future is important. It's like never make a decision that's really important while you're really upset. And don't talk when you're really upset sometimes. It's like I have a 3-second rule. If I'm upset, I don't say anything for 3 seconds. I allow myself to defrag. And, and if the other person is still talking and I'm upset, I try to just let them talk. And I might never be heard as a result. And that's okay with me, because I might say something stupid anyway, But people are not objective about their pain. And if we fail to see the humanity in each other, then boy, we're really actually creating a pretty harsh world, and I don't want to be part of that problem. So I want to walk in loving people first, even if they're mad at me, even if they hate me, you know. I don't have to hate myself because they hate me, And when you feel somebody's anger and rage and hatred, and you're judging yourself too, Sondra, you're lucky to be alive, and your children are lucky you are alive. I mean,
Yes.
and let's go into some of that, like some of your blessings.
Oh my gosh, my children, they're just obsessed with,
Mhm.
they're so perfect. They're, yeah, the coolest. I feel like I have the American dream. I like one little boy who's older, little girl who's just like me, which is great. I mean, they're just both so perfect. And like I said before, my family has been 100% supportive of me. And I think prison made us closer because we got to sit across from each other in a visiting room without distractions, without cell phones, dogs barking, things like that, and we actually got to speak with each other and talk about hard things or not, but just actually communicate with each other. That was awesome. And then it's cool now that I do have kids to see my parents with my kids, because I just see them in a whole different way and I love it. It's cool.
I guess I'm going to ask you some kind of generalized questions, and step away maybe a little bit here from some of this stuff. But if you could advise your younger self how to handle life, what would you tell her?
I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, actually. And I just always remember feeling so unsure and trying to figure out where I was supposed to be, which area. I always felt a little bit different than everybody else, and I didn't understand what that meant. And I think what that meant is I was not meant to follow the crowd. I wasn't meant to, and I don't mean I need to be anything extravagant, but I just wasn't meant to do what everybody else was doing. And I think just be yourself. And I found that in my business, just be honest and be true to who you are. And people are drawn because of that. And I know I like people better when they're just who they are. It's much easier to talk to people when they just tell you what they like and what they don't like. And I mean, it's not like you don't like them because of that. It's cool that we all have differences. So I guess maybe in a roundabout way, just embrace who you are. Don't try to be anybody else. And that sounds so cheesy, but I think it's relevant. We all want to wear the latest fad or and I think that gets hard. We're always trying to keep up with the Joneses, but who in the heck are the Joneses? I don't know.
My girlfriend bought me a t-shirt, maybe 8 or 10 years ago that reads, be yourself, everyone else is taken. And we've all heard that, but I also heard somewhere along the line, it was a woman in recovery actually, and she just repeated what she had heard, but I took this to the bank and I made some stickers and I give them out occasionally. Just little stickers, about 3 by 4 inches. And it says, say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean. And then I heard a Hazelden alumni comedian doing one of his gigs at a restaurant in Minneapolis, and he said, truth without compassion is cruelty. So what do you think of those two concepts?
The saying of truth without compassion?
Yeah, truth without compassion is cruelty. Say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean.
Well, to say what you mean and mean what you say, but don't say it mean is, I think, the proper way of communicating, just in general. I think so many times we just people please, and that gets us into trouble too. We all have needs and wants, and if those aren't being met, then a lot of different things can happen. You can become depressed. You can have anxiety about going and meeting with certain people. Because you know that you aren't going to be true to yourself. You're going to just be doing what they want to do. Or in recovery, that would be dangerous too, because if someone said, hey, let's go to the bar, and you didn't feel comfortable with that, but you went anyway. You never know what would happen. It's
Yeah,
easy. It would be easier just to be like, you know what? That's not my lifestyle anymore. You go ahead without me, rather than saying something mean or inappropriate to them.
mhm. Yeah, and if they're really your friends, they're not gonna, try to get you to do something you don't want to do,
No.
And I have a few friends, I think, that even smoke pot, but they don't do it around me, you
Yeah.
know, and they did it before it was legal. So, and I would never say who they were or anything,
Yeah.
but it's not my life. I don't want something else I don't want a crutch to make me happy, you know. I don't treat religion that way. I don't use drugs or alcohol as a crutch I'm not trying to find God in the bottom of the bottle. Um, and like I'm trying to be the best person I can be and leave the outcome up to God, if you will. But there's this whole thing about people sometimes think they have to get ready to meet God or something. You have to be good enough before God will listen to you, and you have to be good enough before I will listen to you. And it's like I don't know where that comes from, but I kind of think that there's a lot of judgment involved with that, and we don't necessarily get ready to meet God as much as we meet God to get ready, or at least that's how it's been in my experience. Even in prison, I had miracles happen,
Oh my God.
and I I didn't have to, God didn't have to get on my visiting list. Um, so did you have any miracles in prison?
I just have to say I loved prison. I don't want to go back, but I do go
Mm-hmm.
back to speak. But I don't want to be an inmate again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my family thinks I am crazy for that. They're like, how could you love it there? It was hard and it was terrible and it was all these hard things, but I think the miracle in it, the biggest miracle is I found myself in there.
Mm.
And when I got out, I knew who I was and I did the work while I was in there and obviously continue to do the hard stuff out here, but I took every class. I had never touched a Bible until I went to prison and I joined it was called IFI. They changed it
Mm.
now, but
I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
I loved that program and I had counselors in there that taught me so much about forgiveness and I mean, we had to do a life graph and even though alcohol is not my problem, I should say substances aren't my problem. We were born and then life happens, whether it was divorce or um, in my life, my parents did get divorced when I was 5, and it was crazy. It was a terrible divorce. You don't realize how all of those things affect you as a little person. And when I saw it all written out on this life graph, I was like, yeah, that's the age when that happened. No, that makes sense now. And um, I don't think I would have ever gotten the opportunity to really dive into myself if I didn't go away somewhere, had that quiet time, and then was also open to diving in, I guess. Um, because prison in itself is not a good place. I mean, it's not, but you can find it's like bloom that saying bloom where you're planted. And I felt like
Mm-hmm.
I was like coming up through the crack, to
Right.
let my flower bloom.
I got a story about that. It's a
Yeah,
real brief one. I know I probably interrupt you too much.
no, it's fine.
Um, I remember one year in the Missouri prison, I- I'd walk from one hall to, um, eh, to another place in the prison, and there's a sidewalk that would weave around, and this flower kept growing up between the cracks, and it's like I look at it and I go, I don't even see a hole there. It's like, where is that even coming out of, And there's one guy that worked there. I don't know if he was maintenance or who he was, but he just got angry about that flower. And I saw him like rip it up and throw it. It's like, gee, thanks. We don't get too many flowers around here, and you just tore it out to one. and then a few days later it was back,
Mhm.
and and he kept trying different ways to get rid of it. He poisoned it and he just did all this stuff and it kept coming back. And it's kind of like us, no matter what they do to us, it's like we're flowers and we just keep coming back and they just can't do anything to us, And that's a miracle of prison for me. And I kind of feel like it was my monastery, if you will, and it was a Christian monastery, as a Buddhist monastery, and and I met some Muslims and that were not bad people. And there's all these judgments that are out there. It's like I found out that there's some good in the worst of us, and there's some bad in the best of us. But if we look for the good, we'll find it. And that's where people start to heal, is if we dwell in the good portion of humanity. Start there, and that's the flower that needs room to grow, and you help it grow, and you water it, and you give it nutrients. You don't rip it out, and you don't throw poison on it because you're mad, you know. And I used to say, in mad, I might be in mad, but I'm not mad at anybody, So, um, but yeah, it was a miracle place for me too. And it's so rare that I hear someone actually say that. I'm grateful for prison. And
Too.
there's some tough days, man. You know, and I'm glad you're going back. I assume it's Shakopee
Yeah. Yep.
prison for one. Okay.
Yeah, I go back
Um,
15th actually of December. I've gone back a couple times and then now they ask every month, but every month it doesn't work out. So I try to do what I can.
wow, perfect. I spoke to the ladies there. I think at least twice, maybe three times, long time ago. And an old friend of mine was a program director out there. We
Mhm.
were at a restorative justice conference, and that's where I met her. And then she asked me to come out there and speak. Um, and the first time it went fairly well. Second time is a little bit of a sparser audience, and people are looking at their feet, and there's a little bit of a like, why am I here? And why I got to listen to this guy? And who the hell is he anyway? And he doesn't understand my plights and things,
Yeah.
And and I said something that I said, my mom was an alcoholic, drug addict, and a prostitute. And as soon as I said that, at least half of the heads that were looking at their feet looked up.
Hmm.
Now I got their attention. You know, and I said I loved my mom. She couldn't raise us, and they said that it was, when they took us away from her, we were the worst case of abuse they'd seen in the entire state of Minnesota at the time. Nowadays, it's not as remarkable, but she was tying us in our cribs, and she'd put strips of sheet around my wrists and tie me to the crib slats, and did the same thing with my ankles sometimes, and leave us there for several days. And it was kind of bad news, and she was really mistreating my sister, and my sister has no memory of this. I was the oldest. And so, yeah, it was kind of difficult, but at no point did I not love my mom, you know, and I didn't understand all that. I'm a child. And so now I look back and say, hey, she was young, she's wild, she had a lot of problems. I don't know where she came from. How did she get there? And this is a question that a lot of us never ask people. It's like, how did that person, what happened to that person to get to that place? And there are people in prison who are there because of a series of things that happened in their life that, had it happened to other people, they might have ended up as their cellie, you see. And they can't see that. They don't know that. They don't understand it. They can't grasp it. And they say, lock them up and throw away the key, you know? And so people like you come out and then go back in and say, freedom is doable, and through gratitude and doing the right thing, and I got my life back. There's hope here. You can do it too. People need to hear that, and I needed to hear it. I'm just like overjoyed to be able to talk to you, and it sounds like I'm just pumping sunshine or something, but I like it when somebody does what you're doing. And there's not enough of us out there. And I started an organization called Phoenix 490, which is basically ex-offenders giving presentations about forgiveness and who have changed their lives. And so we run the show. It's not somebody else, it's us. And it's kind of cool. But the phoenix is proverbial. You're like the phoenix. You rose from the fires of your past. And oh no, don't tell me you have a phoenix tattoo. Really? Do you?
Like, I can't get my jacket off. It doesn't look like the traditional.
Cool
but
message on your shirt too, by the way. I just now noticed it.
Oh yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Not doves. That I wanted them girly, because phoenix birds look very masculine. So I was like, can you make them look girly?
Yeah,
right.
some of them do. I'm not sure I can find mine or not, but proverbial phoenix. I guess I never saw phoenix as a masculine thing. I guess I just didn't. It didn't occur to me. I see your point though. I mean, yeah, it just never occurred to me. I think I subconsciously didn't pick one that was, like that or something. I'm gonna see if I can find it here to show you real quick.
A lot of people think mine are like doves or something. I'm like, no, they're not. I know what they are.
Yeah, this is I'm not sure you're gonna be able to see this, but I'll try.
Okay.
I've got some
I
images
also
here.
Monroe on the other side of my arm, and a lot of people say, oh, are you just in love with Marilyn Monroe? And I'm like, no, oh yeah, that one's cool.
Yeah, that's just one of a bunch of them that I've got.
Mm-hmm.
I had a guy in prison actually paint one, and I didn't think it would be exactly right for what I needed.
Yeah.
I've used it for some things, but this is the painting I'll show you here too.
Oh yeah.
So and it's still oil painting. But
Yeah.
anyway, the phoenix is a proverbial thing that we all know, and to me, it's a higher coincidence that you have the phoenix on your arm, and so you're right there. You get the phoenix. The 490 might be a little more cryptic. It's the when somebody, I think it was Peter actually. I'm not a good Bible thumper, but when Peter went whining to Jesus about some people that kept doing the same thing over and over again and expecting him to continue forgiving them. He says, I'm so sick of these people relapsing, or I'm so sick of however you finish the sentence, And how many times do we have to forgive these imbeciles? Should we forgive them 7 times and then kick them to the curb? And Jesus said, well, no, forgive them 70 times 7. And I'm sure it's like Peter's ego kind of shrank at that one, but 70 times 7 is 490, so Phoenix 490. So
Nice.
that's the meaning behind it.
Not a Bible thumper. I like it, but it's sometimes challenging to interpret. But I did have one Bible verse that it kept popping up on my TV in prison. Like, I'd wake up in the, you have to wake up for count at whatever time in the morning. And so I'd turn my TV on, and I don't know what Jesus person was speaking, in the wee hours of the morning. But every time it would be Genesis 50:20. And that's, if I can quote it very well, I don't know, but God intended to harm me. Or no, I'm sorry. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. And then like a semicolon, the saving of many lives. And I'm like, is that what I'm supposed to do? Not like I'm going to save people, but just the world may be intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. And I'm going to be someone that's going to go out and I just like, I've been like carrying that in my backpack always, it's the only verse I know, but to me so loudly. And
I don't know many of them either, so we're kind of in the same boat there. It's like I'll know what it said, but I don't know where it said it,
yeah,
that sort of thing. And I had heard what you said, and someone said that to me, and I think I drew the same relief from it. But I've lived my life, a lot of my life, on synchronicities, and the synchronicity of you're getting that scripture when you wake up and you got it more than once, you got it 2, 3 times maybe. But there's a scripture that says, out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, all things shall be established. So you had 2 or 3 witnesses in the synchronicities or the coincidences. I call them higher coincidences. And I think when people generally think of a witness, they think of a human. 2 or 3 people got to co-sign that before you can believe it. Well, it might be part of it. Um, but, God talks to us all differently, hoping we'll tell each other, well, you just told me about God when you said there was something mathematically improbable about your viewing and getting the same message at different times. It's like, what's going on with that? Why do I keep hearing this one? So I'm going to go back and I'm going to look that one up, and I'm going to try and find I'm going to post something on Facebook about it. And I have a prayer group praying for our interview right now, and so we got it covered, sister, you know.
good.
And but I'll put that on there. I say, and Sondra said this, and that this scripture made a difference in her life, and the higher synchronicity, coincidence. I'll figure out a way to say it. I don't know if I'm doing it right now, but I love it. And I'm starting to speed up here because I don't want it to make you late. It looks like we've got a few minutes yet.
Yeah, we're so far so.
Okay. Um, one of the things I like to ask guests, and sometimes uh, they confuse the question with some kind of humility issue or something. And I'm fond of saying no one's more humble than me, but and I heard that in my first recovery meeting, by the way, and it said, humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings was a topic, and the person said, no one's more humble than me. Everyone busted out, so I stole the line from them. And um, but and it just reminded me of something else. I'm segueing here. I have ADHD, I guess. I don't know. I'm taking it out on you, or ADD. Um, but it's like my whole family suffers from ADD, all different dads. So
So it was your mom.
yeah, it was my mom. But my girlfriend one time, she had a good friend over visiting, um, and I wanted to make a good impression because the girls are hanging out, and and I'd only known her for maybe a year or so, and this is like one of her best buds, and so and it was easy to do because she's an intelligent, compassionate human being, and we started having this conversation about philosophy or something. I don't even remember what it was, but my imagination was fired up, and I started quoting people that was supporting her ideas and the like, and I was starting to ramble on a bit, and my girlfriend stopped me, and she says, "Oh my God, have you ever had an original thought of your own?" You know, and I answered honestly. I said, "Well, yeah, I've had an original thought a couple of times, but every time I do, I hold it highly suspect because my best ideas have come from other people, you
Yeah,
know, and listening is an art. And if we listen, and if we look for the gold in other people, we'll see it. If we listen for the gold in their conversations, we will hear it. But you have to have very fine-tuned hearing. You have to have very a discerning ability to see down to the core of human beings and see past their pain, and it's like there's a conduit called the human eyes, and they're the windows to the soul. And literally, if you follow the windows to the soul to their heart, you will see them as they really were intended to be before all the stuff that happened to them. But to do that, you have to see them from the part of you that is before the things that happened to you,
Mhm.
you know? And who pays any attention to the syntax of things will never wholly love you, you know? You can say everything right and everyone will hear it wrong, or you can say everything wrong, but they'll hear it right, you know? Um, that whole matrix. So um, I feel like I'm talking too much again, but any thoughts on any of that?
I think the main thing is we have to see how we're alike. I heard that in counseling once. She said, rather than seeing your differences, see your likeness in each other. And I think even going way back to when we were talking about victims and how the victims are the only ones that matter, my family was victimized by this hugely. And that was part of even then the suicide. It was all of it. There's just such a bigger picture than just two people died in a car accident and a girl went to prison, and it's bigger than the girl gets out of prison and lives a perfect life. I mean, there's just so much more to it. And no one talks about that. My dad, his name was on the vehicle because he bought my first vehicle, and so who got sued? Not me. My dad
Hmm.
did. And his retirement's gone. I mean, he's fine, but it's just you don't
Understood.
you don't think about, and I know that's just money, and I know, but my dad didn't do anything wrong. And now he's victim to my
Hmm.
actions, and my victim was high. I mean, there's no one talks about that.
You mean the one that you had the crash with?
Yeah, not one time has that been mentioned. I have the toxicology report at my house right now. I mean, it's not to throw them under the bus, but dang, I mean, they were painted as this youth pastor and blah blah blah, and like maybe all of these things are true, maybe, but the youth pastor was high, and I
Wow.
was
Okay.
and two accident reconstructions were done. Both came back inconclusive. They could not figure out who actually was going the wrong way on that highway that night. The way they drew that conclusion was from a witness who was on the other side of the highway at 2:38 in the morning. There's no streetlights on that highway. She just was like, "Yep, it was that girl, the blonde. I saw her blonde hair." I'm like, "Okay." Which all of that it is what it is, but they don't talk about any of that. I'm kind of going back to even like prior things that we were talking about, and I know I'm opening like a can of worms at the last minute, but
No, I'm
it's
glad you did. I think facts are important.
yeah,
And this is where people need to understand that it's like when I had some facts in my case too that was never discussed, right? And
yeah,
it's important to discuss these things. And it's like I remember, see, the mother of little Timmy is the child's name. She and I are friends today, and like fortunately, like you, she's forgiven me. And she says she loves me and she forgives me. She goes into the prisons and she tells our story, she says.
yeah.
And all the photographs, I have a little Timmy that I use in presentations I've gotten from her. But there was one point where she said that she thought I was trying to um, sanitize the story. And that would be like me trying to say she's trying to make it stink worse.
Hmm.
You know, you can't make it better and you can't make it worse.
Yeah,
And so the facts are what really matters. And she wasn't in possession of the facts. Uh, and I'm one of those people that remember every disgusting thing I ever did,
yeah,
personally. And you're kind of lucky that you didn't. You had uh, at least you didn't have to see dead people, you
right.
know. And I hit her. I didn't see the baby. Thank God, I might not have survived it. but I did see the photographs, right? So, you know, but there was a lot of stuff that was omitted from the information. And this is something that I really hope you do put in your book. Not, like you said, not to throw them under the bus, but the facts, you know. And it's like one of my good friends that was hit by an impaired driver. She had a grapefruit-sized hemorrhage on her brain, and I told you about her, and we're good friends now, and her family and I. But Chris was her name, and Chris says, she admits, she says, if I would have had my seatbelt on, this might have been a whole different picture.
Yeah.
So instead of just blaming him, she took accountability for her part. And if the parents know that their son was high, they should have been talking about that at your sentencing. At your sentencing, that should have been said, in my opinion. You know, not because they're bad people that they didn't. You know, but what do you do? I mean, you don't even regret that you went to prison. And I've talked to and heard so many people that went to prison. They did a whole bunch of time, and they have no regrets. You know, that's so powerful. And you're bringing beauty out of ashes. You know, you are the flower growing up from the ashes. You are the phoenix. And I don't know, maybe I'll send you an invite to Phoenix 490 on Facebook or something. I don't know. So what do you want me to do on your credits here? Do you, what's the name of your book? Have you decided yet?
Oh gosh, I don't know yet. My client is here, but we can wrap it up. So I don't know yet. If you have ideas, I'm like, gosh, I don't know.
We'll talk later about that. How's that sound? Maybe we can.
I would love. I feel like we have a lot more to discuss. We could probably talk for hours though.
Well, maybe we should do part 2 at some point.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Cool. All right. Thank you, my friend. I'm going to thank you now. Your client's there, so we're going to wrap it. And I see that we have 2 minutes, and that's not enough time for you to be at the chair and, you know, with your tools ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
So do you have a website or anything that you want me to share with people?
For my business?
Anything, whatever you want.
I don't think so. I do have a website but they can look up, I guess on Instagram, you could look at me, I'm Sondra D. That's my, the app, I'm Sondra D. Then you can look at my before and afters. I take pictures of everything that I do and I post it to Instagram.
Okay, I don't have Instagram, but I will get one.
Yes.
And I'll do that. Awesome. All right, thank you for your time. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to the Incomplete Skeptic. And I hope that your heart was gladdened and people were not triggered. I think it would be hard to be triggered by Sonia's rendition of transformation. So there, oh, my kitty's showing up too. Kitty says, you got to go wrap it up, dude. All right.
All right.
All right. Peace out. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Incomplete Skeptic, sober, wise guy. Catch you on the rebound. Peace out.
Bye.
Bye-bye.